Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Let me just adjust this so I don't have to bend. There we go. I'm wearing heels, so you just got to adjust it. All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Phyllis. Can we actually get another round of applause for Phyllis? Best talks I've heard in a while, so I was like over here trying to do my stuff, and I was like, I don't know if you saw me. All right, so we're going to get started on this workshop. So this workshop is near and dear to my heart because I've given it so many times, and when I was actually invited to speak here, I was like, Marie, can I do this one? And she was like, yeah, you can do it because it sounds really good, and it is. I have given this workshop to middle schoolers, 10-year-olds, to the most senior organizers. I've given it on college campuses, at conferences, everywhere. And yet, I was hesitant to give it this time around. Because it's a debate workshop, and I was hesitant to give it because as I was, we were getting to a point where we were seeing the escalation of the famine in Gaza, and that the majority of the population is at stage 5 acute classification of famine, and we had people as racist as Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out to condemn the famine and the genocide. I said to myself, if you're not condemning, what rhetoric of mine is going to change you? I said to myself, can we really gather together and do these interactive workshops about how to lobby your senator and how to, persuade your county fair goer to sign on to this divestment? It was trivial to me. And then I thought again. And I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene has condemned the genocide. Would Marjorie Taylor Greene join me in a protest? I'd like to see that day. No. Would Tucker Carlson join me in a protest? Would Piers Morgan join me in a protest? And if they would, maybe they would join it for their own self-interested reasons. Because America first, right? But not because Palestinians are a people of dignity and they deserve their rights to be respected. Because that church was bombed, but not because the Aqsa Mosque has been desecrated for decades. Because it concerns me. And then I saw a video on social media of 2 Israeli psychologists. It just blew my mind. They were talking about how do we deal with our patients that are coming in and that are telling us, I feel guilty for condemning the starvation in Gaza because of what happened to us on October 7th. Like, how do I reconcile these 2 things? And the psychologists were saying, well, this is, I don't know if anyone's heard dialectical behavioral therapy. 2 truths can exist, right? We can both condemn the starvation. And then I realized, wait a minute. There's all these people that are sitting here and saying, we've gone too far. As if the occupation wasn't too far. And this is the reason why this workshop, why now is the prime time to talk about discourse and how to persuade those that have the foundation, maybe, that believe that Israel has done something too far. Now we have to get them to believe it was too far from the beginning. Right. Now we have to get people, I know this is going to sound, I don't want anyone to record me saying this. Now we got to get people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson to join our side. Please, no one get that on camera. But we have to get them to join our side, not because I like them, but because it'll take everyone. It'll take more than a village. It'll take a whole country, bipartisanly, to push for divestment and sanctions and an end to the criminal colonial regime in Palestine. So that is what today's workshop is. Because I heard the sentiment being expressed last night. How do we get people on our side? How do we talk to people? How do we penetrate this iron sentiment within Congress, within our neighborhoods, our county fairs, our schools, our higher educational institutions?
Churches?
Excuse me?
Churches
as well. Faith-based institutions. But that's what this workshop is. This workshop is about how do we talk to anyone? How do you talk to the county fair goer? How do you talk to your staffer? And so, that's what this is today. So I apologize, I actually had slides that I was going to project, but we weren't able to get it connected, and that's fine. I've done this without slides before, so this is going to be an interactive workshop. Get ready to talk. It's really important. And it scares people, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't, because there are 3 keys to talking to anyone about this subject. I believe this isn't entirely scientific. This is kind of just me, like, making up these statistics. 50% of your ability to persuade someone is sticking to your message. That seems so intrinsic, right? So intuitive. Well, duh, and of course we have to stick to our message. No. I have seen the most senior organizers, the most people I look up to, people I learn from. I'll watch them and I'll say, you let them derail you. You could have stuck to your message and you talked about this. 25% is knowing how to rhetorically appeal to the person. This is another big mistake I see, and I will talk about this. Knowing what gets the MAGA kid at your state fair is not what gets your professor at your sociology class. These 2 people just have entirely different things that appeal to them. How do you talk to them? Don't get stuck in your head. The last thing, and this surprises people, I actually believe only 25% of it is the facts. And when I say facts, I mean numbers, because some people are like, oh, I'm so bad at remembering the numbers. I see them on Facebook, I see them on TikTok, I don't know, I can't, I'm not like you, Senna, you could just spit things out left and right, and I'm like, I don't know how I do it, because I'm not a numbers girl. I think only 25% of it is the facts. I really do. I really think you only need a couple key points, and you can win any argument. And I don't want to frame this as an argument, but you can win people on our side. Okay? So, let's talk about that. Let's go. So, overview of today's presentation. First I will talk about 6 key rhetorical points. And I see some people taking notes. I would really encourage that, actually. 6 key rhetorical points. And then we're going to do our interactive exercise. So, the first key rhetorical point. Stick to the foundation of your argument. Of course, again, this sounds intuitive. What do I mean by that? We have an unlosable foundation. That foundation is not, why did Palestinians elect Hamas in 2007? Was it the children that elected Hamas, or was it the adults? Does Hamas support the 2-state solution? The foundation is, no matter who the Palestinians elected, no matter why they elected them, no matter what happened on October the 7th, even if every single claim the IDF makes about October the 7th was correct, the civilians of Gaza should not be collectively punished for the bombing of civilian entities.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying other points, and this is something I'm going to get into, there's some nuances. I'm not saying we shouldn't engage with ahistorical propaganda about the election of 2007 and what happened. We should engage with those points. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. But you got to teach people to walk before they can run. Some people just aren't at that discourse yet. We just got to get them on board with the idea that what is happening is a war crime and we need immediate divestment and sanctions. So, more of our indisputable message: nobody's claim to a land justifies the dispossession of a group of people and the privilege of one group's civil rights over others. We're not going into, are the Palestinians descendants of the Canaanites or the dinosaurs, or are they Semites, are they not? That's not the point. We're not going into who is a Jew, and are the Jews of today, are they descendants of the Hebrews, and do they have a claim? It doesn't matter. It just, can we engage those points? Yes, we can. But is that the crux of what we should be engaging? No. Because someone can have a claim to a land from thousands of years ago, that does not justify the exclusivity and the creation of an ethno-nationalist state at another group's expense. So, the message, I'm just going to go on a list. The message is not whether Hitler was a Zionist. This is the argument that a lot of people... It's an important argument. We should establish key points about the anti-Semitic nature of Zionism. But again, this leads us down its own little tangent, and it gets us way past what we're focusing on. Whether Hamas is a resistance group or a terrorist group. I know some people might be raising their eyebrows at me. Please listen to me when I say this. I'm not saying we shouldn't engage with these points, but again, teach people to walk before they can run. Sometimes, like when people are bringing up Hamas and I'm talking about starvation, I'm like, let's just put that aside for a second. Whatever Hamas did or didn't do doesn't legally, morally, conceptually justify what is happening. So there's more of these that I could just, speed run. Whether the Jewish people have a historical claim to the land. Another one, Hamas's tactics versus Israel's tactics. This is a big one. I see a lot of people, for example, I was in a lobbying training, and somebody asked, and again, this was actually someone who had been in our circle for a while. It wasn't like some novice organizer. She said, well, if the senator brings up Hamas, can I talk about, can I give the examples of how Hamas is treating their hostages really well and compare that to how Israel's treating it? And I told her, do not play their game. That's the game they want you to play. They want you to play a comparison game of, well, is Hamas better than Israel? We can engage with points about, hey, there's a very clear distinction between how Hamas is treating their hostages and how Israel has treated their detainees. And that's something we should bring up. But if you go down that spiral, you're playing their game. And you lost your message. So, the second thing, kind of flowing from this point, flowing from this point, it's about appeals, okay? So, I mentioned this kind of briefly earlier, but what I find with the Republican crowd, the American First crowd, I went to the GOP booth at our state fair and just sat and talked to a guy with a MAGA hat for half an hour. Something I hope no one took a picture of. But you know what I find? I find that this message that we talk about, I find that Americans, if they actually knew what was happening, they would condemn it, right? And what I found is at the end, it was like, well, yeah, why are we doing that? What appeals to this crowd is not, a lot of times people will use civil rights appeals, apartheid, talking about the discriminatory laws. I'm sorry if this is implying something really bad, but I don't know if that appeals to them necessarily. What I find appeals to them the most appeals to free speech and appeals to America First. So instead of saying, this didn't begin on October 7th, the Israeli government has been killing Palestinians for blah, 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 blah. Instead of that, maybe you could say, well, this actually didn't begin on October 7th. Thousands of Palestinians are detained every year by the Israeli government for social media posts, for posts criticizing Israel. IDF soldiers can raid a person's house, can check their phone, and can choose to detain them solely on the basis of the criticism of their government. American politicians have been denied entry from Israel because of their criticism of this foreign entity. We are giving billions of dollars that could be used to house homeless veterans to this entity. What do you think about that? We won them. We won them on that point. Now, lay mothers and fathers, just kind of your lay American, I don't really know what's going on. I don't really talk politics, blah, blah, blah. Appeals involving everyday examples, especially that of children. This is a very pivotal question that I've asked many people. Can a Palestinian and an Israeli drive on the same road to get to the same location? Just that question. Ask that question to your senator, ask that question to your mom with the stroller, ask that question. They will not be able to answer it. I remember I had a staunch Zionist argue with me, and I asked her this question, and she was, well, I don't really know about that. Just answer the question. Can they ride on the same road? Well, answer the question, please. Well, no, they can't. Why? Well, they can't because, why? And then I said, what do you think of the fact that blacks and whites were not able to drink from the same fountain in the 1950s? She said, well, that's different because the blacks weren't terrorists. Then they reveal themselves. Ask that question, get them to incriminate themselves.
And then where do you go? Yeah.
What is it?
Where do you go from there?
Well, from there, then what I do is that I say, okay, so you agree now that there is institutional discrimination by law, right? We just established that this is by law, that they cannot do the same things, analogous to the fact that blacks and whites could not participate in the same activities, and were not enshrined the same rights in the 1950s. So now you essentially have agreed with me that there is legalized segregation in the West Bank, correct? And then, well, no, I don't agree with it but you just agreed with me, right? Should we be funding that? Boom. And then we bring her back to the argument. So I'm going to go a little bit more into that, but essentially kind of make them respond at your terms and then connect it back to whatever your ask is. All right, tip number 2. Everyone in Minnesota is sick of this tip because they've heard me say it a million times. And you're going to recognize this one. Don't fall for their rabbit holes. I call this one the rabbit hole. And I actually have a picture of a rabbit to show you guys because they're really cute. But there's a lot of it actually kind of flows from the previous tip, but the reason why I say this is different is what happens is we kind of get into the process of answering their questions. And going to what I was just saying, you want to flip it back on them. Okay? Don't get into this habit of answering, like you're on the defensive, and they ask, well, what about this? Well, I think blah, 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 blah. Well, what about this? Well, actually, this... It's like, this isn't like a fucking news interview, you guys. Come on. Like, you could be the one to ask the questions, okay? So, I'll give you an example. Well, why are you focusing on Israel when women can't even drive in Saudi Arabia? You know, where's your outrage against, like, Iran and Bashar al-Assad? You know, I get this all the time. I've gotten this from, like, fucking senators. And you know what I've heard some people respond? Some people say, well, you can't compare Saudi Arabia to Israel because Saudi Arabia is, you know, it's not committing genocide or it doesn't have, like, oh, no, honey. We are not here to talk about Saudi Arabia. We are not here, we're not here to talk about Saudi Arabia. Like, if I was sitting here and talking about, if I was talking about Saudi Arabia, would they ask me, well, what about Gaza? Like, they wouldn't do that, right? Another, what I like to say is, are we giving $3.8 billion a year to Bashar al-Assad? I asked this, and then the senator was like, well, see, it's complicated. No, but answer the question. Are we? Yes or no? No. And then if it's a country that we are giving aid to, we are giving weapons to, like Saudi Arabia, right? Well, we're giving to, and I condemn that too. All right, next. Just swat it off like a fly. Next. That's not what I'm here to talk about. So, another example of a rabbit hole. Okay, this is a very important one. I hear this. This is a very common way people respond to this myth. And I want to caution you to deepen your response. So, a Zionist will say, well, Israel is the only country in the Middle East that doesn't, this by the way happened to me at a state fair, well, Israel's the only country in the Middle East that doesn't throw gay people off buildings, and just, look at how they're treating LGBT Palestinians, blah, 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 blah. It's very tempting to respond and talk about how Israel actually treats gay Palestinians. And we should do that. We should mention that Israel actually isn't this nice, peace-loving, rainbow flag-waving, saint towards the gay Palestinians. We should say that. But don't just do that. Because, again, you want to connect it back to your point. So instead of just saying, well, actually, Israel spies on gay Palestinians and blah, 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 and then they're going to say, oh, no, they're not, and then you're going to say, yes, they are, and it's going to be like, no, they're not, yes, they are, and then it's like, well, actually, they don't even allow people, well, that's because right-wing Netanyahu, and we're actually, fuck. Okay, get back to the point, right? So you can make the argument, you can say, well, first of all, if you want to even start with that, that's actually not true, because here's this. But let's just pretend for a second, that Palestinians are the most bigoted, homophobic population on the planet. You think we should bomb them to death? Should we bomb the Bible Belts? Like, is that, you think that bigotry relegates a person's civilian status? You really believe that? You really believe that we should bomb and starve Palestinian civilians because they have a social problem? I, as a Muslim, I don't believe we should bomb Islamophobes. I don't believe that we should starve Islamophobes to death. I don't think that people's bigotry justifies genocide or mass starvation. So let's pretend your argument is true, but now it's not true, and here's why. Boom. And now let's actually move back to the point, which is that we shouldn't be bombing and starving people. Boom. Get them back to the point. All right. So, I just have to kind of consolidate some of these because we are lower on time today. All right. Tip number 3. Avoid, so this is kind of twofold. Avoid generalities. Use very specific examples. I was just kind of giving you guys kind of examples and outlines, but in an actual debate, I would use specific examples. Use specific examples and avoid examples that leave room for debate. Choose the most unambiguous thing you can mention. So what do I mean by that? Again, super common. I'll hear someone say in a lobbying meeting, well, X amount, I think it's like 70,000, I just lost track of the numbers. 70,000 Palestinian children have been killed. Is Representative so-and-so going to fund the murder of children? That's a very good point. I'm not saying that we shouldn't mention the number of people that are killed. But friends, how do they respond to that? We all know. What is it? Excuse me? Yeah, well, they'll say that, but then they'll also say, well, see, you can't just bring up how many people have been killed. In war, people die, right? It's collateral damage, just because you can't just say that, people get killed. Like in every war, there's civilians that, So, you can't, but here's the thing. I'm not saying that we can't engage this point, because then you can respond and you can say, well, actually, these civilians were deliberately targeted, and then you can show the evidence. But what about this? What about instead of setting yourself up for kind of a sub-debate, you bring up something from the get-go that's unambiguous? So instead of just saying, this many people were killed, what about you say, well, Representative, 70,000 Palestinian children have been killed deliberately, indiscriminately, often by intentional sniping to the head by IDF soldiers, and bring up an example. Dr. Mark Perlmutter, this is my go-to, world-renowned conflict zone pediatrician, found that children were being directly sniped in the head at precise areas in their brain that could have only been accessed by a world-class sniper. Do you believe that Representative Smith should continue to fund this? You believe that we should continue to fund the sniping of children? Yes or no? Boom. Set them up for something unambiguous. Bring up Hind Rajab. They cannot answer that one. Bring up, just keep repeating it, 365 bullets in a 6-year-old girl's body. You believe that we should fund that. Keep saying it, okay? So, I brought this one up. I don't know, has anyone seen Mahdi Hassan's recent debate? Some of you yes, some of them no. Okay. Mahdi Hassan went on this kind of bogus YouTube channel called Jubilee, and it's kind of ridiculous. And he was surrounded by a group of Republicans, and they were all debating him. One of them comes up, and he's, they got onto the topic of Gaza, and he was saying that, human shields, he was, first Mahdi was like 70,000 or however many children have been killed, and then they goes, well, it's war, or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly how he said it. Then Mahdi said, Palestinian children sniped in the head by an IDF soldier. Yes or no, do you condemn? And then he tries evading. He says, I'm going to ask you for the second time. Palestinian children sniped in the head by an Israeli sniper. Yes or no, do you condemn? And then he says, well, children, many of them are brainwashed. And he's like, this isn't looking good for you, man. Third time, sniper in the head by an IDF soldier. Do you condemn the sniping of children? Yes or no? He evades again. Fourth time. He got to a fifth time. Do that. Do that with your reps. Do that with your neighbors. And it doesn't, by the way, when I say neighbors, it doesn't have to be confrontational. Because I know we don't want them to take it like it's like a fight and then run away and then be like, oh, get on the defensive. You can ask them, Miss, do you just, I know you're a good person. I know you believe in the rights of children. Just please answer. When children are sniped in the head, as Dr. Mark Perlmutter, the world-class pediatrician, world-renowned pediatrician reports, do you condemn that? Do you think that we should be funding this? Well, I just think that, just please answer me, because I know you don't support this. Right? Get on their side. Because when you're talking to people, you don't want it to feel like an attack if it's somebody that you're trying to get on your side, right? You want it to just kind of, you want to come at them from a place of understanding, depending on the context, of course, which I can go on about that. But that's, again, example. Another example. I hear this all the time. Well, this didn't begin on October 7th. It began in 1948 when 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes. Again, this is a very general, broad, and contentious, I don't think it's contentious, but in their eyes, contentious statement. Leaves room for debate. Can you justify that statement? Of course you can. But do you want to come at them stronger with something they can't possibly debate? It's your better bet. So maybe instead of, because then what are they going to say? When you say 750,000 expelled from their homes, what are they going to say?
Fake news.
What is it?
Fake news.
Fake news. They're going to say, the War of Independence and 5 Arab armies surrounded the newly formed state of Israel because they didn't want to, and actually they didn't get expelled, they left on their own, whatever. And then you're going to have to debate it, debate that. Why not this? Why not bring up again a specific, incriminating example? Instead of saying 750, this broad statement that they're going to come at from every direction, you can say, and I like to ask this question, why don't we start slavery at Nat Turner's rebellion and not the thing that he was rebelling against? So first put it back on them, and then decades before there were Israeli hostages, appeal to them, appeal to what they're arguing. Defense of Children International found that 500 to 700 Palestinian children were being detained in Israeli prisons every year. The Jerusalem Ministry of Public Affairs found that 99% of the military courts had a 99.72% conviction rate. 500 to 700 child hostages a year. Decades before October 7th. Boom. Get them with something specific. All right, tip number 3. This is a very common one I find on college campuses. I don't know that it's as common with this crowd. Avoid abstract social justice jargon, is what I like to call it. Not that you can't use it, but when you're trying to convince someone that's like, I don't really know what's going on, being like, colonization and genocide and white supremacy, they're just going to be like, what the fuck, and just walk away, right? Stick to the facts. As a creative writer, what I used to get told, which is very stupid advice, by the way, don't ever tell a writer this, but I used to get told, show, don't tell. But it works in this context. Instead of saying colonization, prove it. Instead of saying Israel is a colonial state, you can say Israel has established a system of domination over the Palestinians according to their own founding fathers, such as Herzl, who wrote in 1905 that Israel is a colonial state. They all practically, agreed with this framing that Israel is a colonizing entity, and there's over 50 discriminatory laws against the Palestinians. very specific, punchy examples. So instead of, Zionist says, Israel has a right to defend itself, instead of being like, Israel is a colonizer, and you are shifting the rhetoric to place blame on the Palestinians. This is colonialist rhetoric. You're policing the ways in which the oppressed respond to the oppressor, the oppressed, the oppressor, the supremacist. Oh my God. Just give me examples. Just give me specific. Instead of Israel has a right to defend itself, instead of being like colonization, blah, 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 you can say, okay, going back to my other example. So, when Dr. Mark Perlmutter reported that Palestinian children were being sniped in the head, yes or no, do you believe that that's self-defense? When Israeli attack dogs mauled to death autistic Palestinian man Muhammad Ibhar, as they so often are deployed to maul to death disabled Palestinians, do you believe that that is self-defense? Specific examples. All right. The fourth thing. So I read the fifth one. I think we're on the fifth tip. Utilize questions to the other party. Make them question their point of view. So I talked earlier about not staying on the defensive. So don't just for example, Zionist goes, well, why are you framing Jewish safety as apartheid? Kind of, again, trying to deploy that sort of, what I kind of found is like emotional manipulation. I think it's manipulating our sense of emotion. And you can go, well, Israel's committing genocide against Palestinians, and there's 50 discriminatory laws, and I can list all the laws right here, and I can give you all these statistics. Why are you letting them interrogate you? Who are you? Who are they? Make them question their point of view. So what, instead of this, why is demolishing thousands of homes, bulldozing farmland, detaining 500 to 700 children, why is that Jewish safety? Why is that Jewish safety? The question is not, why am I framing Jewish safety as apartheid? The question is, why is this Jewish safety? So, sometimes we get kind of stumped, and it's common, it's natural. It happens to the best of us. Here are some sample questions you can ask. You can literally say, well, what do you mean by that? Why do you think that? You can literally say that. Like if somebody says well, I don't know why you're framing Jewish self-determination as apartheid, and I find it anti-Semitic that you're calling the only Jewish state in the world genocidal. Like this was the one refuge that we had. You could say, why? See, I just buddy for a second. That happens. You could just say, I don't understand why you are framing an ethno-national, I actually wouldn't use that in this context. I say, why are you framing the detention of children, 500 to 700 of them a year, Defense of Children International reports, why are you calling that Jewish safety? Is it that this is Jewish safety, or is it that you are putting so much, throwing all your cards and putting so much trust in the idea that this government is a representative of the Jewish people? So kind of flip it back on them. You can ask can you give me an example of what you're talking about? Or how could that be true if? Okay, I'll give you a great example of one time this happened to me. So I get a call, and some of my colleagues are like, Sana, we need you at this lobbying meeting, it's in 15 minutes. What? It was literally in 15 minutes. So I just quickly got ready, and it's a Zoom call, and we're doing this lobbying meeting, and we're trying to get our representative, our senator, to sign on to a resolution to condition aid to Israel, and so that the aid isn't being used to demolish homes and detain Palestinian children. And he started off, basically after we delivered our ask, he basically said, well, we'll talk about it. There's some considerations that we have to think about. And I was so dead. I was like, I got ready for this meeting in 15 minutes. And I was like, well, can you tell me what the considerations are? And I was like, well, there's just some internal discussions that we have to have. And I was like, no, but we're at this meeting. So I just want to know, what are the considerations? And then he goes, well, I just think that if we condition aid to Israel some people could see that as holding them to a higher standard. And you guys, I was so dead. Like, I just hadn't even gotten sleep. I was like up doing homework. I was just like, what? Like, who signed me up for this? And I just blanked. I was like, oh shit. Like, normally I'm very sharp and punchy with debate, but this time I wasn't. I was like super tired, which it happens. So here's what I did. Ask questions until you can finally pick it up. That's what I did. So I said, what do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? And then he's like, well, people will see this as like, we're putting so much emphasis on measures to target Israel and not other countries. He's like, so I asked him, okay, again, I'm imitating how I was blanking. Can you give me an example of other countries that, what other countries actually? That's the first thing I asked him. And he's like, well, there's human rights abuses in Pakistan, and I think he said Iran, he said all this other stuff, and then I picked it up. Then I was like, now I asked him. Then I said, are we giving $3.8 billion of aid to Pakistan? And he's like, well, that's not really, that's not the point. And I'm like, but it is the point, right? Because you're saying that if we condition aid, then we're not holding other countries to the same standard. So I'm saying, like, there wouldn't be a standard to hold them to if we're not giving them the aid. And then he goes, well, I mean, there's so many UN resolutions that are targeting Israel. And I was like, okay, those are separate conversations. Like, we're a Palestine organization. We're here to talk about Palestine. There's a Pakistan organization, and they want to come and lobby about Pakistan. And there's a Saudi Arabia, Yemen organization. They want to come talk about that. That's great, and I will support that. But I'm asking you, like, enough of the whataboutism. Like, stop pointing fingers. Why can't, is there an inherent reason why this measure is problematic? Or is it just that we're not doing it for others? Because if there's other countries that are doing the same thing as Israel, I think we should do that to them too. And then he goes, well, and then I don't even actually remember what he said, because he was just totally like, what the hell? And he just didn't even know how to respond. But that's how you can pick up your pace. Just keep asking the questions. Okay. And the last thing. Break things down. We often, rhetorically, I come from I've done a lot of educational stuff. We're told with our students, really explain stuff and break it down. Repeat back. Do a lot of repeat backs. I don't know if some of you are in healthcare. That's also a common sentiment and something that people are asked to do in healthcare. Repeat back what they're saying in a reframed way. So if someone says, for example, well, calling for a ceasefire is going to embolden Hamas and it's going to threaten Jewish safety. So instead of just responding to that point, break it down. Really just think of it as you kind of have this taffy and you're stretching it out and you're okay, look, this is what you're saying, right? So hold on. So I want to just break this down for you. You're saying that if we have a ceasefire, aka we stop bombing children, we release hostages, both sides get their hostages back. You're saying that that's going to threaten Jewish safety? Like bombing indiscriminately is not going to stop. It's not going to harm Jewish safety. But seizing that bombing is. You with me? Another example. Instead of saying Israel discriminates, again, using these general terms, Israel discriminates against and brutalizes Palestinians as practicing apartheid, Israel has over 50 laws that explicitly discriminate against Palestinians on the basis of their ethnicity. And I can give you one example of this. The nation-state law explicitly says that self-determination is unique to the Jewish people. This is one of over 50 laws. As I said, I can give you more examples. Boom, break it down. Instead of Israel's killing over 10,000 children, Israel has used, I'm so sad, I should have updated that. This was from a while ago. Israel has used precision bombs and world-class snipers to directly target children in civilian entities, knowing that there were no militants present, as evidenced by X, Y, and Z. Break things down. All right, the last thing before we go into our exercise. I know we are kind of running on time, aren't we?
I don't, Maureen knows the time, so.
We want, you have 10 minutes.
I can do this. Rapid fire. All right, the last thing, miscellaneous cheat sheet, quickly. All right, just like a miscellaneous thing, saying like, this is kind of just building off of what I said before, but usually when you're talking about apartheid, just saying like Amnesty and Human Rights Watch and the UN says that Israel's an apartheid state, if you're talking to a staunch Zionist, what they're going to respond back is like, oh, well, Amnesty and the UN are anti-Semitic and we shouldn't trust them. So again, instead of just saying that, just break it down, as I said. And then also, if they say, well, actually it's anti-Semitic, well, is it anti-Semitic because it just goes against your worldview? Like if they didn't say Israel's an apartheid state, is it just that you don't like what they said and so you're calling them anti-Semitic? Or can you tell me explicitly what in their methodology was flawed? And can you tell me like specifically what they said that was wrong? This is actually something I used on a Zionist, the one I was talking about earlier, where they were saying, well, actually, I don't care what Amnesty and Human Rights Watch say, they're anti-Semitic or something. And I was like, okay, specifically though, what did they say wrong? Like what do you disagree with? And it was like, well, they said, well, I don't remember it off the top of my head. And it's like, well, honey, if you're going to tell me that it's wrong, you got to tell me why it's wrong. So, then what questions? Super powerful. Super powerful. I used this on an elected official when he was saying, we can't have a ceasefire because we have to focus, we have to think about how we're not going to embolden Hamas and embolden Iran. And I said, okay, we keep bombing and bombing and bombing until Hamas is eliminated, aka all of Gaza is eliminated, because you can't destroy a political party and you can't destroy resistance to bombing by bombing. Then what? Then, like what happens next? We just keep, you know, there's like a meme that's like, it shows like the earth on fire, and it's like Israel when it's done defending itself. All right, let's get to an interactive exercise.
Can you repeat the categories of the key points you said?
Yeah, so the first one is stick to the foundation. So here, actually, I'll go sit up with you after.
Okay.
All right, interactive exercise. I'm going to give you a context. I'm going to pretend that I'm a Zionist. Or not a Zionist, but someone that's not going to be a person to protest. And I'm going to give you the context, and I'm going to start saying stuff. And I want you guys, whoever is comfortable responding, raise your hand, and I will call on you. And we will have a little discussion. Your goal is to get me to agree that we should divest from Israel and that Israel should end the occupation. All right, so let's start. So, I am a mother with a stroller, and I'm at a counter fair. And you have a table with your anti-war group, and I come and I say, I just think that both sides have really rigid views and are just refusing to compromise for peace. And like, I don't like what Israel is doing, but I don't know, I think that they've been fighting for a long time. They've been just like, they've been at it forever, for thousands of years. And I think that like, the Christians think it's their land, the Jews think it's their land, the Muslims think it's their land. And like, I don't know, I just don't think that this is something, like we're in America, I just don't think this is something that we should be focusing on. Boom, debate me. Raise your hand. Yes?
Maybe, if you disagree with both sides, my question to you is, which side are we sending over $3 billion a year to?
Well, that's the thing, I don't think that we should be, like, the thing is, like, I don't think that we should be sending money to them, but I just still feel like I don't support Israel or Palestine. Like, I just think both sides are wrong. Keep going. You have to keep going until I stop you, man.
Oh, I didn't know I signed up for that. Well, what? Can I look at my cheat sheet? Well, let me ask you this. Have you you don't agree, you say you don't agree with both sides, you think both of them are wrong. My question is, do you agree that we should be supporting a state that, that has people of different races driving on different segregated roads?
Well, again, I think it's really fraught. Like, we don't actually know what's happening, because I think, again, both sides have their claims and they have essentialist views. And sorry, mom with the stroller's not going to say essentialist. Sorry, just kidding, that's a joke. I just think that they both have, they just both have really extreme views. So I don't think we know what's happening there. I think it's complicated.
Excuse me, but why did you stop at this table?
No, he has to talk.
Why did you stop at this table to ask me that question?
He has to talk. All right, I'll call on the next person. Go ahead. Actually, no. Classroom rules. Who was raising their hand? Raise your hand. Anyone raising their hand? Well, I'll call them. Go ahead. Yeah.
Excuse me, miss, but why did you stop at the table to ask me that question?
Well, I just think that, we have people, shutting down roads. We have people, on social media saying that, we have to talk about it, or I can't drink Starbucks. And I just think that, I don't know why, again, we're in America. I don't know why we're focusing on, the war between Hamas and Fatah,
I'm sorry you don't understand that.
Well, I'm just saying that I don't know why you guys have this booth here. I just feel how do we know who's right and who's wrong?
Well, I don't understand why you stopped at the booth, that you don't understand why we're here.
But I'm saying, why, we have people at universities, breaking windows and putting tents on their yards, and, I just don't, who's right and who's wrong? How do we know? Someone else like to respond? Yeah, go ahead.
Israel has destroyed every university in Gaza. Do you approve of that?
No, but that's the thing, how do we know that? How do we know that?
Just turn on your phone.
But that's the thing on my phone, I've seen people say that, I'm just seeing people say that Israel is saying that the other side is terrorists, and then the other side is saying that they stole their land, but they're saying that's their land. So is it the Jews or is it the Muslims? I don't know. All right, let's stop with this one. Thank you, guys. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, so quickly, guys, let me just brief you quick. How to navigate the both sides argument, and how would I, by the way, this was based on a real thing that happened to me. Everything I said was actually said to me, a kind of reprint. I loved your first question. That was the perfect way to set it up. Now, how do we continue with that? I think you kind of dropped it. All right, so you started with, which one are we giving the money to? And she said, well, I don't think that we should be giving them money, but I don't know who's right and who's wrong. And that's when you can jump in and say, okay, well, here's how we know that we're not giving that money to an altruistic entity. Here's how we know we're not giving that money to the right place. We're giving money to this entity that's doing X and Y and Z. Do you support that? Well, I think both sides are wrong and blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, there really is no both sides here, because if you look at the two sides, one side has had this many people killed, this many children sniped in the head, this many discriminatory laws against them. The other side does not. The other side is getting billions of dollars in aid. So there, set it up. So here are the two sides. Do you think we should be giving money? We're at this table right here because we just don't think that your tax dollars should be going to this. We think your tax dollars should be funding education for your kid. Boom. Set her up. Get her on your side. All right. I want to go through one more just because I know I can just take questions at the end. All right. I'm your legislative staffer. This is a centrist Democrat politician. And I'm the staffer, and you guys are trying to tell me that we need to call for a ceasefire, and that the civilian debt, publicly call for a ceasefire and support end U.S. aid to Israel. And I say, okay, listen. The civilian deaths are sad, it's tragic. The senator is speaking out, the senator is having conversations, she is asking difficult questions. But when Hamas kills 1,200 people, it's only inevitable that a country is going to defend themselves in a war. What do you want Israel to do when they are surrounded by an entity that is trying to kill them all, that is trying to eradicate their existence? And debate me. Yes.
I think that anyone who is in a position to start a war should feel pain before they inflict.
But that's the thing, that's what we're saying. Hamas started the war on October the 7th. Of course, Israel is going to defend itself. And the senator believes that we should support our ally in their right to exist and their right to defend itself. And so we cannot sign on to this legislation at this time, but she is asking difficult questions.
But I have 4 brothers, and my mother always used to say, sit down and talk about this before you throw your fist.
Well, we have people coming into our office all the time that have cousins that have had to hide in shelters because of the rockets coming in from Gaza. We have people that have, their friends have been taken hostage. What about the hostages? Israel needs to get their hostages back, and Israel has a right to defend itself in a war. Someone like to debate me?
Not if you're
Yes, go ahead.
aggressor. I agree with you that everybody has a right to self-defense. Is it self-defense to kill 700 children on purpose, deliberately?
No. In a war, people die, and the senator is asking questions. The senator is doing what she can.
Excuse me. You misunderstand me. I understand. People die on both sides. Is it right for either side to purposely, deliberately kill
But there's
children?
no evidence that they're deliberately killing children. There's no evidence of
You have a
that.
child in that stroller.
There's
Do you think
the
any
idea.
government in the world has a right to deliberately put a bullet through that child's head?
So to answer the question, the senator, of course, does not support that.
I'm asking you.
But I'm here to represent the senator. She does not support that.
Does the senator support? She doesn't.
She does not support that, and she is again asking the difficult questions. The IDF is not perfect. Israel makes mistakes, but as a whole, they are defending themselves.
How does she feel on the question of defunding the military aid to Israel?
She does not support that at this time.
But how is that consistent with her asking difficult questions?
Because she is asking difficult questions on how to minimize the civilian casualties.
It seems to me that if she's asking difficult questions, she is at least imagining that somebody's doing something wrong.
All right, so let's cut it off at this point to save time. So I do need to wrap this up just for the interest in time. So thank you guys. Give yourselves a round of applause. This was also Emma is smiling at me because she was there when this exact thing happened in the office. That's my sister over here. So, how I would have responded. So you got us on a good track. You were, you started out. Sorry, can you remind me what the first thing you said was?
I agree with you that people have a right to self-defense. This is self-defense to purposely killing
Yep.
children.
And then you set it up, right? But now, where I think you dropped it, is once I started saying that, well, yeah, killing children is bad, but there's no evidence that they're killing children. Throw that evidence. Throw that evidence. Hind Rajab, Muhammad Abhad, the Israeli sniper. Give examples of that. But if you give it, but what happened when this happened to us? I literally started rapid firing all the evidence one by one by one by one. And I swear, my sister's a nurse over here, so she works with medical conditions. She was like, I thought he was seizing. Because he was shaking. She remembers, I'm not making this up. He was like, well.
He had a pretty moderate space tremor. I was staring at him.
He was like, listen to how he responded, because he couldn't. It's their job it's their burden of proof that there were not Hamas targets in those buildings. What the fuck? And then I responded, the attack dogs that mauled the autistic boy to death? Really? It's their burden of proof? And then we'll talk about it. All right, thank you guys. I know we have a little bit over time.